How's it going, guys? Before we get into mechanics, we got to make sure we get all our pitchers here holding the ball the right way. And the first grip we're going to go over today is that four-seam fastball. Now the four-seam fastball, guys, one, everybody have a baseball in their hand? Okay, everybody show me their four-seam grip. All right, now everybody here has a pretty good idea of how to hold their four-seam fastball. Now the reason they call it a four-seam fastball is when you hold the ball across the seams and that ball comes out of your hand, the ball rotates and you get 1, 2, 3, 4 seams working for you. And that creates four-seam rotation. And that's why we call it a four-seamer. All right, now everybody take a look at their grip and everybody look at their fingers. The first thing we got to make sure is that we don't get our fingers too far apart on the ball. All right, and a good way to see how far apart you are on the ball is if you take your pinky and put it in between your two fingers just like that. And that's a pretty good indicator of where you should be. All right, the reason why we don't want to have our fingers too far apart on the ball, because it gets borderline to, it's almost like a split finger fastball, right? And if I hold that ball with my fingers this far apart, what do you think it's going to do to the velocity?
Slow it down.
It's going to slow it down a little bit. So we want to make sure, again, that our fingers are a comfortable distance apart. Again, there's that word again, comfortable. All right? Now, as far as our thumbs, everybody take a look at where your thumb is. Well, we want to make sure, and it's a common mistake among young pitchers, is they get that thumb and it kind of rides up on the side of the ball. You want to make sure that your thumb is more on the bottom of the ball than on the side of the ball. Okay? And everybody see how I have a gap here between the ball and the back of my hand. We don't want to get up on the ball too much like that and choke it off. Again, if I choke it off or if I grab it too tight, it's going to take velocity off the baseball. Okay? Now the type of rotation this thing creates when you hold the ball with four seams is just like that. One seam goes over the other and you get a nice clean rotation. And this rotation causes the ball to go straight. And if you throw a pitch that goes straight, it's a good foundation for throwing what?
Strikes.
Throwing strikes. And we all know that strike one is the best pitch in baseball. And that's what we want to get all you guys doing, is getting ahead of hitters and throwing strikes with your four-seam fastball.
I'm going to interject one thing. Habe's talked about the four-seam fastball being the foundation out here on the mound throwing strike one, throwing strikes because the ball goes straight. I want to talk about this is the foundation, and this should be the only grip we use as an infielder, as an outfielder, or a catcher, is this four-seam grip. Habe's talked about the two-seamer being a sinker, okay, trying to deceive the hitter. If I'm playing shortstop and I throw a two-seamer over to my first baseman, I don't want to deceive my first baseman and have it sink or run. I want to hold a four-seam grip every time. I want it to go from point A to point B. If I'm making that play, he's on my team. I want him to catch the ball. The four-seam grip should be used by everybody out here, including the pitcher to throw strikes, but every other player that plays baseball.
Come on out here, Nick. Here you go, buddy. Now Nick's been throwing a little bit here. He's loosened up. He's probably been throwing for about 10 minutes. And we're just going to give Nick time to get going again. And what I want to tell Nick to do first is start throwing the ball with four seams. Great job. Now what I'm looking for here is, one, I'm not looking at Nick's mechanics. I'm looking at the flight of the ball. And the three things I'm going to look for is, one, movement. I'm going to look for velocity. And most importantly, I'm going to look if Nick is throwing strikes. Now the reason I'm looking for those three things and not his mechanics is very simple. Because if he's got good movement, has good velocity, and is throwing strikes, that's telling me as a coach, I don't have to do very much with this kid. He's doing a lot of things right if he's doing those three things. That's not to say there's areas of improvement for pitchers that are doing that, especially young pitchers, but all it does is it protects me in case I have a kid out here that has unconventional mechanics or looks a little herky-jerky. Because once again, what we're trying to do here, we're trying to celebrate the individual. Everybody's going to be a little bit different.